All right, I'm here now with Congressman Andre Carson, representing Indiana's 7th District. Congressman Carson, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
What an honor. Thank you.
The outline of the 7th District today is very different from the map that we saw proposed in the Indiana State House this week. What are you hearing from constituents? What is your reaction to this map and what it would do to your congressional district?
Well, folks, including myself, we think this proposed map is absolutely ridiculous. They split our state's capital into four. These new maps have the same person representing downtown Indianapolis, also representing the good folks in southern Indiana. These districts would even cross time zones. So if you wanted to get to your district office, you'd have to drive 3 hours. More if there's highway construction. The 7th Congressional District currently represents most of Indianapolis, and it needs to stay that way. We host in-person events constantly, regularly, and we have office hours where folks can get help with Medicare, Social Security, passports. I even host annual job fairs and youth opportunity fairs, both of which are in person. Just last month, our office helped an Indianapolis woman get $10,000 back in delayed Social Security benefits. That's not an unusual story for us. Our office has probably the best reputation for helping with constituent casework in the state.
Do you think this is likely to end up in court if a map like this passes? And how much of that is on the basis of splitting a community of interest and, for that matter, a community of color?
From what I understand, there are several lawsuits that will be filed. So often we get calls from folks who complain that their actual member of Congress didn't help them with their casework. They didn't return calls or just straight out said, sorry, we can't help you. So we help. We get calls and we meet the need. We meet the challenge. We accept the challenge. And we want to do our best to help as many Hoosiers as possible, right in the heart of our state.
People who support this on the other side of the aisle might cynically suggest that someone like you would want to oppose it because it would make it much more challenging for you to hold on to this seat in Congress. If this new map is enacted, will you seek another term in Congress?
Well, we right now my focus is on serving the folks of the congressional district that I represent. Making sure that we're continuing bringing home federal funding for our community. And under these new districts, Indianapolis will miss out on that funding. It doesn't matter which district I'm in, and if I were to win, they would say something. And I've gotten used to that kind of criticism, but I'm here for the right reasons. I'm here to serve our constituents, and I think that any language that seeks to minimize it, I think is rooted in the kind of unfortunate opposition that we've seen in our darker history in Indiana.
And this has been a very ugly and divisive debate. We've seen a lot of members of the state legislature face threatening situations, swatting incidents. We also know that a number of state senators face a very crucial vote on this next week in the midst of this whole ugly debate. What's your message for those in the state Senate who may be considering this bill next week if it does indeed pass the House?
Well, as someone who receives death threats regularly and weekly, I empathize with them. I empathize with those senators who are having to endure these bullying attempts, having to withstand these paper tigers, these threats of primary attempts. These folks are very popular in their districts. And redistricting is unpopular in the state. Who could they find at this late in the game to run against them that is formidable or even credible? No one. It's an empty threat. Once the new year begins, Donald Trump will be on to something else. It is an empty threat. I agree with our former governor, Mitch Daniels, that folks should call their bluff. It's an empty threat. It's a paper tiger. Hoosiers have a very independent streak. I think we should stay consistent with our independent streak. Trump is a one-term lame duck president whose approval rating is around 35 to 36%. redistricting is opposed by most Hoosiers, the math is quite simple.
One rationale that I've heard from supporters of this bill is that they feel as if Democrats, if they regain control of the House next year, would attempt a third impeachment of President Trump, and that holding on to the House, if Republicans do, would be a way to avoid that. Do you think that a Democratic majority would attempt to impeach President Trump again in the new year?
It's too early to say, but what I will say is that having a Democratic majority falls in line with the vision of our founding fathers. Government that will act as a check and balance on the other, particularly with reeling in presidential overreach and executive excess.
Where do you think this conversation is headed, and what are you hearing from constituents there in the 7th District about this proposed new map?
People don't want it. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, folks don't want it. And that seems to be pretty consistent across the state. And folks are willing to back those legislators who oppose it. And I think that it's very clear, when you don't conquer the bullies from grade school, junior high, high school, or even college, they're still there. You'll find them in the workplace. They won't go away. And the best way and the most effective way to deal with a bully, someone who knows, is to stand up to the bully and call their bluff. And the bully is always riddled with fear. Those of us who remember The Wizard of Oz saw this very imposing figure, but behind this myth was a very fearful person who was simply afraid of the world. And so they created this mythology and this narrative around themselves to make people afraid. But when you got behind the veil, you saw fear. And that's what we're seeing now.
What's the conversation been there in Washington about all this as we monitor the ongoing events at the State House? What are you hearing from your colleagues and others there in D.C. about what could happen in Indiana?
Oh, people think it's ridiculous on both sides of the aisle. They really do. And I think when, folks get too cute, things happen in the opposite. You could see Democratic gains as a result of redistricting. You have a very popular president who is trying to get ahead of a historical tide that suggests that the House will flip, and it's trending that way. And that's just how things work. Even when you have Democratic presidents, that seems to be the trend. But you can run, but you can't hide from the will of the people. And those legislators should stand firmly.
Yeah. You say you've heard from a number of Republicans who oppose this, but your colleagues in the Indiana delegation on the other side of the aisle, they all say they support this move.
Well, I don't want to impugn their motives, but I know many of them have benefited from the current maps. And again, fear is a motivating factor. I would like to see more boldness from my colleagues. I mean, they're making some very provocative statements to keep Trump happy, but he'll turn on them too. Stand firmly in what you believe. You represent an equal branch of government. You were sent by the people. You don't have one boss. You have hundreds of thousands of bosses called Hoosiers, and that's who you should report to. That's who I report to.
To a certain extent, don't all the current members of Congress benefit from the current map? Republicans might hear your comment there and wonder if you too benefit from the map as it's drawn now, being in such a heavily Democratic district.
Well, that's an understandable question. I mean, it's something I never take for granted. Whenever I run, I always run, 20 points behind in my mind, but I run with the objective of representing all Hoosiers who are in this district.
Any final thoughts before we go on where this conversation could be headed next?
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Congressman Carson, thank you for your time today. Thanks so much.
What an honor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.